What's up everyone, welcome back to Brad's Bioactive Builds, where I do step-by-step, do-it-yourself, naturalistic reptile enclosures. In today's video, I'm going to be going over how I did the hardscape on the land portion of this 8x4x6 Paludarium, which is going to include making the lid for the nest box, how I built a tree out of 6 different pieces of ghost wood, finding solutions on how I can remove, replace, and clean plants for a large reptile that's destructive, and how I tried some new methods on detailing fake rock. Enough said, let's get into the video. Don't forget to check out part 1 where I build the enclosure from scratch, part 2 where I make the nest box, part 3 where I add the filtration and set the stage for what's to come, and part 4 where I build this nearly 6 foot tall epic waterfall that has a hide built inside. Alright, let's go. Finished off the front so my XPS board had something to tie into. It also acts as a glass guard so my reptile can't open up the enclosure. Picked up various different thicknesses of XPS board. I won't go into great detail on how I put up the XPS board. I have a lot of videos on that, but there are a couple things to notate. Cut the board to size. I had to cut a hole so my exterior canister filter can have the water come back into the enclosure. Use a serrated steak knife so I can mark up the back. Added dry lock so silicone would bond to it better. Applied silicone where the PVC board met the 2x2 and hung my board while the silicone was still wet. Used spray foam between the enclosure wall and the nest box and stuck some XPS board to insulate. And then wrapped the box. Got a cool idea from John over at Sim Container, which is using a blaster gate. This way I can shut off the access to the nest box. To build the seamless lid, I got a piece of board, took some measurements, siliconed it, secured it permanently into its spot, took the other half and butted it in, marked my hole, and cut out the inside diameter so it would fit snug. Scuffed up the blaster gate. That way Gorilla Glue would adhere to it better. Stuck it into place, clamped it down. Applied silicone. And pressed it into place. Took another piece of board and overlapped the original seam, cut out the hole, added some spray foam, stuck it into place. This overlap is what's going to camouflage everything in and make it look seamless. It'll also help prevent water from entering the nest box. Drilled out some holes where I'm going to be hanging my ledges. This allows the spray foam to go in and anchor both pieces together. Pinned it into place so the ledge would stay put. A little bit of water helps it cure quicker and denser. Added some more ledges. I really wanted to incorporate something like Pride Rock from Lion King into this build. You'll see why later on in this video. You'll kind of notice throughout this build I work sporadically, mainly because I was able to focus on one area, kind of move to the next, and see how I'm going to tie it all together. This way everything fits in real nice and maximizing surface space for my animal. Same thing for this ledge. I needed to be able to see how much clearance I had for the lid of the nest box, so when I opened it, the ledge wouldn't get in the way. Used a wire brush to rough up the XPS board, so polygem zoopoxy would bond to it better. Hit it with a heat gun to tighten everything up. When working with spray foam, it's best to do it in stages. Waiting for it to cure, and then building it back out. This way it doesn't expand so much and fall off your working area. Then trimmed everything down. It was cool to have Will Exotic and Ravishing Reptile stop by, giving me a hand putting down the first few coats of polygem zoopoxy. The extra help was super appreciated, mainly because this process takes the longest, especially in an 8x4x6 Paludarium. The both of them were pretty blown away on how easy this stuff was to use, and I'm sure we'll see some content on their channels in the near future with some builds they have coming up. Texturing it with a fake rock silicone stamp, then hitting it with a wet sea sponge. After they left, I got to the more technical parts of this build. I tried something new, but I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out. So I added some wet polygem zoopoxy to the inside seam of the nest box. Covered where it was going to lay with plastic wrap. And placed the lid on, hoping for the best that once it cured, it would come off and not mend the whole thing together. But I lucked out and it worked as planned. So I tried my luck again and went around the whole outside of the nest box and/or hide. Following the same process as before, laying down plastic wrap. Put the lid back into place. And pulled it off after 24 hours. This part was a little time consuming. I had to build it up over 4 or 5 days, waiting for each part to cure before moving on to the next section. Painted on polygem 1618 clear epoxy. I applied this on parts that aren't going to be seen so I can protect the XPS board. Built out the hide entrance using spray foam and XPS board, placing on the top. Built up the back side, and threw some character on the roof. Detailed everything with putty epoxy. To make the seam look as unnoticeable as possible, once again added plastic wrap and put the lid back on. And butted zoopoxy up to the bottom of the lid, making sure not to go over it so it could still open. Once again, just detailed it all into place. All of these steps made for a tighter fit, but I'm okay with that because it'll just keep the lid secured better. Carved down some of the rock foam and applied more zoopoxy. To hide where the water is going to be coming into the enclosure from the exterior canister filter, I started creating a cap, spray foaming a couple of pieces of XPS board together, and clamped them into place. Carved out the inside of the cap, sealed the inside, and over where the cap was going to rest. Added some spray foam, stuck the cap into place. And filled in the seams. I wanted to add this cap first so I can tie in the hide underneath Pride Rock. To do this, I added zoopoxy to the back side of a few cutouts. And then once dried, put them in their spot. Tied everything with spray foam to lock it into place. Use zoopoxy on the inside seams. After that was all done, I added the left side to the entrance. I did it this way to make it easier to work. This is as good a time as any to start tying in the hardscape to the ceiling, so I went ahead and taped it all off. Applied zoopoxy tight to the tape and about 3 or 4 inches down, being careful not to have too much of an overlap onto the tape itself. Detailed it in with a silicone stamp, and pulled the tape while the zoopoxy was still wet, creating a nice clean line. Push back any imperfections with a sea sponge. You're going to notice a waterfall in the right corner. I have a full step-by-step video on how I made this. I wanted to build this first so I can tie both sides of the enclosure to the middle of the hardscape. After getting the ledges mounted, I just trimmed them down like before, and added my putty epoxy. Taped off the ceiling, getting ready for paint. I originally chose the color terracotta as a base layer, using a few different tones to try and get my color right. But I wasn't really happy in the direction that I was going, so I went ahead and started using a light brown. I had to repaint the whole thing to match this color. I'm glad I went in this direction because it fit my vision more for this hardscape. Trying a new method, I added some black acrylic paint to a spray bottle, filled it up with water, and started spraying it all over the background. This is going to create inconsistencies and make it look more weathered. I did spray it thicker and lighter in some spots, just to give it more of a hardcore definition. The cool thing with naturalistically detailing rocks, there's no rhyme or reason, you just kinda have at it. After that, I dry brushed on different tones of brown acrylic paint. My first coat, I pretty much just dry brushed on the same color all throughout the background. Hopped into the enclosure for the 1000th time with this build, and continued dry brushing. When dry brushing with my lighter tones of brown, I add them in random places, breaking up the consistency, making it look more naturalistic. For my lightest tone, I really just hit the peaks or the high spots. I still have to add some zoopoxy below this line, but here's the seamless transition between the box and the lid itself. After painting, pull down the paper from the ceiling. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my Patreons. Your added support is super appreciated, where you get one-on-one calls, early access to my content, real-time behind-the-scenes footage of my current projects. We also have a pretty cool community where we get to talk builds. Installed my light trim that'll hold my basking lights and my DP projector. I didn't film this process because I have a whole nother series on how I built a huge vivarium that goes over the ceiling in great detail, which would include how I added the lights, the trim, the fans, Mist King system, and foggers. Definitely check that one out if you're looking to learn a little bit more. All in all, it's pretty cool on what you can do for a ceiling of a reptile enclosure. I'll post that video right up here. To build the tree, let me rewind real quick. Stuck on the base right above the water line. Cut out a groove in the ledge so my tree trunk would fit tighter to the wall. My original plan was to use PVC elbows and PVC pipe and wrap it in zoopoxy, until I came across this ghost wood at a reptile show. I'll link their info in the description below. Squared off the base, marked off the ceiling where the top of the tree was going to land, drilled some holes, installed the trunk into the spot, and screwed it in through the ceiling. Zoopoxied in the tree trunk base, and detailed it with a bark silicone stamp. Tied in the other part with the rock silicone stamp. Trimmed down some of the branches to fit a little bit better. Placed the branch into the enclosure so I can start getting an idea on how it's going to line up with the basking lights. Held it together with a zip tie. Screwed it into place. Then mended everything together using zoopoxy. Once again using the silicone tree bark stamp.
To add another 4.5 foot branch, I wanted this one closer to the base, so I just repeated the same process. I used hot glue to tack in my smaller 30-inch branches, finishing it off with putty epoxy. For a base coat I use white Drylock because of its gritty texture that kinda matches the ghost wood. And then color match as best I could using acrylic paints, kinda going in reverse, starting with my lightest tones, working towards my darker tones. Adding my medium and dark tone to complete the color match. I'm really happy how this tree came out. It's going to be a cool focal point inside this habitat. I currently have my Mertens inside this build, and they destroyed the plants, so I had to come up with a way to fix that problem. So using mostly fake plants was going to be the answer to that problem. Took some PVC elbows and stuck it to the background. Applied putty epoxy around the elbow. Stamped it in. Tied it in to match the rest of the background. Chopped down the stem of the fake plant. Cut some PVC pipe. Stuffed it onto the fake plant. Added hot glue. And wrapped it in zoopoxy. Color match with some green, with a little bit of a dry brush for added detail. Stuck the base of the plant into the PVC elbow. This is going to work out great for any time I want to replace the plants, clean the plants, or simply just rearrange them. Stuck some air plants into the wood itself, and draped over some Spanish moss. After feeling confident I was done painting the upper part of the enclosure, pulled the tape to reveal those nice clean lines. I still got to finish up the left side of the enclosure, but I can't do that until I complete the aquatic section and run some pipes. That'll be in the next video. One of the coolest things about this build was lifting my newborn son up on the Pride Rock, and one of the main reasons why I built this feature. Building out the land portion of this enclosure has been fun to say the least. And sometimes you really never know what it's going to look like until you put it into action. I'm really happy how the tree came out and can't wait to see the Mertens utilizing it. Having 2 basking spots will give them options so they can fine-tune where they want to warm up for the day. Having nest box and hides will really create visual barriers so the animals don't stress themselves out. Watching the Mertens dive off this ledge is going to be a true sight to see. Going down into the aquatic section that's going to be full of fish and other plant life. I'll be going over that in the next video. I'm anticipating the waterfall to be flowing in full action, or the Mertens head popping out of the hide, or climbing up the tree. Some of these features I add, I don't always plan. I just try to use every square inch, making it usable space, and let it form organically. The fog will drape down the fall, adding that much more to this naturalistic art. But overall, I'm happy how this is turning out, but let me know what you think of it down in the comments below.
The most stressful part of this whole build is coming out in the next video, where I build out the aquatic section. Stay tuned and you'll see why. But if you've enjoyed this video, please do me the favor, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps this channel continue to grow. For the first few videos of the series, check out this playlist right up here. For the next video in the series, check it out right there. For some other videos you might like, check it out right here. Thanks for watching.